really get this to go well so we can have that awesome opportunity to come to our school. So.
Yeah, I'm DJ Ryan. For all of you that don't know, I'm the president of the College Dems, and I'm going to be serving as the MC for the first portion of the evening. I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. We're going to be debating some really interesting subjects, and now let me introduce somebody who really saved the day for us, Father Anderson. We lost our moderator at the last minute, and Father Anderson came through and with very short notice and is here today with us. So we really are grateful for him.
That's why I'm dressed up.
So I guess let's get started.
If I understand my notes correctly, the first topic of discussion will be immigration reform, and I'm not going to try to pronounce your last names. So George and Luke. George will be representing the Democratic position, Luke Republican. And this is one time where I will use my iPhone. Normally, those of you who have me in class know I hate folks pulling out these machines, but I'm going to be keeping time. The way this is going to work, each of the candidates will have a minute and a half to make an introductory statement, followed by a 5-minute back and forth. Then 5 minutes for questions and answers from the audience. Folks my understanding is that in the past they've been able to get about 3 questions in, which means state the question. There's no need for the long drawn out intro leading up to a possible question. And then 30-second closing statements by the 2 party representatives. So I'm not sure who's going first this round.
Do we have a coin?
We have not done the coin toss, or does it matter because there are 4 topics?
Yeah, it
so.
doesn't matter. Okay, George, you're first.
George, you're first.
I'm arguing for the Democratic Party. I'm George Davila, and immigration. We should institute a policy of amnesty and legalization of illegal immigrants in the United States. Out of pure humanity, for one, we will help the immigrants, help them achieve the American dream that we all strive towards. We'll help the descendants live better. All of us are descendants of immigrants. My father was an Ecuadorian who came in when he was a child, and all people should have the right to his way of life, despite of where they were born. And there are many political reasons too, like they could pay taxes, spend money more efficiently, and they can serve certain government positions, like in the military, and take advantage of federal programs, like I'm doing today, with financial aid. And as I understand, we're both Hispanic as well, taking advantage of these programs. The DREAM Act in 2010, enacted in Congress, that gained bipartisan support. It was to help immigrants who came in when they were still children, had no choice in the matter, under 16 years of age, as a requisite for this, and they had been good moral character, probably better than most of us in terms of this. And it's an effective means of recruitment, as stated by the DOD, Department of Defense, many officials there. And no actual terrorist attacks in the United States have been carried out by known Latinos. And certainly our Border Patrol can't guard against terrorists when random strangers get over this to come live here.
George? Thank you. Luke?
First test, is the mic working? Good. You guys can hear me? In regards to national security, the economy, and morality, today's immigration policies are a failure. Billions of dollars worth of illegal drugs and guns flow across our southwest border in the gang-dominated black market that has led to tens of thousands of deaths. Our states face multi-billion-dollar deficits that are still smaller than the expenses they incur due to the education, healthcare, and law enforcement costs spent on illegal immigrants. And the current administration and party's do-nothing approach has led to a social setting to be created in which certain groups are subject to second-class citizenship due to assumptions of illegality. I'm here today to say that this does not have to be the case, that there is a brighter, better, more conservative alternative. Under a Republican plan, a fortified border, supplemented with more boots on the ground, will help stop the flow of illegal drugs and guns and lead to a border that will be marked not by killing, but by safety. Our economic plan calls for temporary worker programs for seasonal workers, raising caps on visas for highly skilled immigrants, and removing the unnecessary bureaucracy behind the current legal immigration system so that those who waited in line can be rewarded for doing the right thing. Finally, stopping the flow of illegal immigration will stop the assumptions that certain groups are illegal. Let us not be a country marred by drug criminals, deficits, and social prejudices, but rather a united nation marked by safety, economic prosperity, and equal opportunity for all its citizens, in a place that can only be truly called a land of opportunity. Thank you.
I would ask the audience not to refrain from evocative reactions. Now we have 5 minutes give and take between George and Luke.
Well, you said it's the land of opportunity, but what kind of opportunity is it to anyone who can't come into the country, who has to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to come in? My grandparents spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, all they had just to get into the nation. And they ended up broke. My grandmother eventually lost her foot. They had nothing. How? It's not opportunity to them. They just want freedom like we do.
I 100% agree. My response to that would be, let's give them freedom. Let's give them opportunity by making it easier to become a legal immigrant here. Because the fact of the matter is, they did spend a lot of money. I don't know if your family came here illegal or legally or not, but many Hispanic families do come here illegally. And I don't think they come to a land of opportunity as an illegal immigrant. And I think streamlining the legal immigration system will allow America to be the land of opportunity for immigrants and citizens alike.
I agree, but that sounds great, but how does it actually work? We don't have any of that. We've been saying that for, 100 years, and still, our legal immigration policies, I'm sure we can all agree that it's not good. We have 11 million illegal immigrants in the nation who can't get the same public services that we all enjoy, and yet nothing has been done about it. We've been talking about it for years, but nothing has actually been done.
Well, I'd say, I can't speak for the last 100 years, but if you look at the last 4 years, particularly the first 2 years of the Obama administration, you guys had supermajorities in both the Senate and the House, as well as the White House, and you insisted on passing things like Obamacare instead of tackling what I think is a particularly important issue of immigration reform. I mean, there are 34,000 people dying in a 4-year period on our southwest border, which is more than 5 times how many people have been killed in Afghanistan and Iraq combined in the last 10.
Well, yeah, but taxes collected from the immigrants shouldn't easily make up for healthcare costs as they would for any citizen. And you didn't particularly state in terms of illegal immigration. Do you mean that illegal immigrants will be a drain on this system, or?
Yeah, because illegal immigrants aren't part of the system, that because they're forced to take jobs that are often paid in cash, that they don't file for income taxes, many of them, they do. Their kids are still able to receive the benefits of America, to receive an education, to receive health care. The costs add up as well, law enforcement costs. And part of the reason the Republican Party is very much a pro-legal immigration party. We want to streamline that so that they become part of the society, become American citizens, and contribute their part, and then in turn receive the benefits of the land of opportunity.
Well, I would love that too, but just saying that doesn't actually make it happen. We have to enact an actual plan to make this happen. Like the DREAM Act 2010, it was had bipartisan support, but it was knocked down due to political endeavors and by both the Democratic and Republicans, not one particular party. So my point is that this actually has to occur. We can't just say that it actually occurs.
Okay. My question for you would be, as far as illegal immigration, what do you think is one of the biggest things stopping it? I mentioned national security. You mentioned how we can't stop terrorist attacks if Hispanic families are able to make it across. Why do Democrats then mock Republicans who support building a fence, who support putting more troops on the ground along our southwest border?
Well, because it's going to cost billions of dollars to build and maintain those barriers, and yet over the course of 20 years, they'll still be able to slip in. That's to stop basically they're making Mexican families from getting in. How are they going to stop Al-Qaeda trained terrorists from getting in? This like comparing some sort of super soldier to just a family guy. You can't stop terrorists from getting in through those borders. Terrorists have all sorts of means of doing what they're going to do.
I'd have to disagree. I think we can. I mean, we're America. I think we can stop them. I mean, look at Israel, all right? They've built a fortified fence, all right? Israel faces a lot of national security risks. Whether you're pro-Israel, anti-Israel, whatever you say, they face a lot of security risks, and they have a more secure border than we do, and they live in a more hostile environment than we do.
Well, I don't know about you, but I've never gone to Taco Bell and been threatened by a suicide bomber. There aren't many Mexican terrorists. There aren't many Al-Qaeda cells in Mexico planning to get into the United States. Building a border just for the purpose of national security against terrorism assumes that there's some sort of worldwide conspiracy against us in Mexico, that Al-Qaeda somehow took over Mexico or something and is using it to send in.
My concern is not Al-Qaeda, it's the drug cartels that are very much present. 34,500 people were killed in a 4-year period from 2007 to 2011. That is a lot of people. That's more than the people being killed between the borders of Afghanistan and Iraq. As far as a border goes, it can work. We only built a 14-mile wall in San Diego. It was controversial. But at the time in '94, before it was built, 500,000 illegals were crossing. After it was built, it dropped down to 100,000 in 2002. They extended the wall. It was actually more like Israel, which is like a double wall almost. Fell from 100,000 a year, now down to 5,000. So you went from 500,000 to down to 5,000 in basically a decade. So
yeah,
it is possible. It's just we get mocked when we try to propose things.
You're thinking 100,000 average Mexican people, like just all of us except from Mexico. While we could have just refined that group into 5,000 terrorists instead of 100,000 Mexicans.
George, Luke, thank you very much for your exchange, but it is now time to take questions from the audience. So, yes, please direct it to, it's for both, I presume.
Actually, no, I'm going to direct this one to George, and this is going to build off what you were saying. What would you react if the situation in our country became the anarchical situation that it is in certain parts of Mexico where drug cartels are running everything?
Well, we have many more resources than Mexico. Mexico's government is very unorganized, corrupt. Ours, well, in comparison to Mexico, is much more. So, we're a first world nation. Mexico's a third world nation. We're the most advanced nation in the world. Mexico, while it's not doing poorly, it's certainly not on the same level as the United States. You can't really compare the two. And certainly we have a lot of drugs in our nation, but we haven't seen the formation of widespread drug cartels that are taking over the governments and our nation.
Yes, ma'am.
This is directed to Luke. What do you propose? I've heard a lot of talk about how to keep people out, but what do you propose we do with people who are already here illegally?
Okay.
And their children that are grown up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two types of children: those who were brought here illegally and are still legal citizens, and those who are natural U.S. citizens. And for the latter, I think we should respect that. For those who are here illegally, there are routes that we should give them to eventually achieve permanent legal residence. Whether it's serving in the armed forces honorably, living within the country for a certain number of years and paying taxes and contributing their part to it. I think those are certainly options. I think what we want to avoid, though, is letting those who cut the line get in front of those who have been waiting for years to get into this country. And I think if we streamline the legal immigration process and allow those who are here illegally to apply to come here legally, and we get the process going quicker, those people who are here illegally can apply for to be here legally and become part of the American society.
Yes, down front.
How can you say you can't afford?
Who's this directed to? That's George.
George. George, how can you say we can't afford a fence around the border when you add a $6 trillion debt? I mean, that's 12 zeros. You can't spare $3 billion to build a fence around the country?
We can certainly build a fence around the country, but it'll be very expensive, which the Republican Party is usually against. And I personally did not spend $6 trillion, but the nation over the years has a lot of things to spend it on with the economic crisis. We really have to focus on spending on more important things than a giant fence. Like, I would personally like a giant water slide, but you know.
35,000 people died down in Mexico because of the cartel. Isn't that enough to build a fence there to stop the cartel?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
35,000 people died because of the cartel. Isn't that enough to stop them?
Well, we can't stop them. We have military forces. We have the largest air force in the world. We have the most powerful army in the world, and especially compared to Mexico, it's not like a drug cartel is just going to be able to slip across the border like any family would be able to.
They do.
What?
In the back? Yes. Last round.
My question's for Mr. Zaro. Why, or actually, do you not support the DREAM Act? Why do you not support the DREAM Act? Or if you do support the DREAM Act, why do you support the DREAM Act?
Yeah, I'd say I support parts of the DREAM Act. For example, I think military service, if you do choose to serve in the armed forces and make the most noble sacrifice, absolutely. I think if you serve honorably, you can achieve American citizenship. The reason I don't support the DREAM Act is because if you came here illegally, the key word there is illegally. Maybe it was your parents' mistake, maybe it was your parents' fault. Parents make decisions that are, sometimes poor for their kids. I think we should respect the parents who got in line years ago to get in here legally with a broken legal immigration process, and to respect those kids who've been waiting in Mexico legally and having a harder life trying to get into this country and respecting the rules that we do have. I think if we fix the immigration process we currently have and allow it to be streamlined, allow more people to come in here legally, then that problem will solve itself and there will be no need for the DREAM Act.
Last question, the young man in the blue.
Yeah, my question's for Lou. My question is, there's been a lot of talking about the whole drug cartel violence that happens across the border. But do you think this is maybe more a symptom of the large drug enforcement going on in the Southwest that leads to a hungry market looking for drugs to feed themselves, and so they go to these cartels who are operating these, giving them the drugs they're looking for, whereas more lax drug enforcement laws in the U.S. would lead to the cartel having less of a stranglehold on the drug market in the Southwest.
I would not support having laxer drug laws, regardless of the consequences. I don't think having lax laws in regards to cocaine or meth has any benefit. I think what we can do to solve that issue, because there may have been unintended consequences, is cut off the cash flow. Drug cartels sell their drugs to America. That's where the money is. And in return, they get guns, which is where the violence comes from. You don't kill 35,000 people in a 4-year period unless you have a lot of guns. If we build a wall, cut off that cash flow, and make a secure border, make it very clear that the rules in America can be enforced, there's no more of this black market, then I think the power of the drug cartels will wither out, because they won't have money, they won't have guns, and I think you'll see the problem solve itself.
Thank you. Now, you each have, 30 seconds for a closing statement. So we're gonna, George, you're gonna go first. Yeah.
The United States needs to enhance its cultural background overall. We need to make sure that we don't become an intolerant nation that won't accept illegal immigrants. For example, Hitler once said of the United States that it accepts only very specific racial groups, which we don't want. We don't want to be like Hitler, obviously. And we also want to assert our culture around the world and make sure that the United States remains a world power with influence for a long time. We don't want to lose out to Asian or European nations in the coming century.
Thanks.
I'd say there's 3 points to a Republican plan. First, national security. There's $1 billion illegal drug and gun market going on. 35,000 killed in a 4-year period. This is a very dangerous area. I think more troops down there, more border patrol agents, and a fortified fence is not something to mock at, something to laugh at. I think that's a very serious thing and a very plausible solution. Economically, I know we didn't touch upon it a ton, but illegal immigrants do put strain on our economic resources. If we streamline the legal immigration process, we allow them to come in, start paying taxes, become part of society, and help lower deficits that many of our states are facing. And then finally, from a moral standpoint, I think if we can streamline legal immigration and the notion that if you come here because you're Hispanic, that you're illegal, I think that's more of an equality of opportunity, and that really will make America a land of opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The second topic deals with taxes. Now, according to my notes, it has Romney tax plan. Representing the Democratic side, Nisa Assem, and then Jeremy. Jeremy Fagg is representing the Republican position.
This is on.
All right, folks, we're ready for the second topic of the debate, which deals with taxation. And this time, the Republicans will be speaking first. So, Jeremy, if you would introduce yourself.
All right. As father said, my name is Jeremy, and I'm representing the Republicans on this issue. I would say this debate ultimately comes down to issues of efficiency, practicality, and fairness. I'm here tonight to prove that the Romney-Ryan budget is the most efficient, most practical, and fairest policy for putting us back on a path to prosperity. The United States management of economic resources has been horrendous in the past few years. The government borrows 40 cents of every dollar it spends, and the debt recently hit $16 trillion. Clearly, this is not sustainable. The Romney-Ryan budget will remove excess spending, regulations, and taxes to help the private sector create jobs and grow the economy. Why does this plan make sense? It's practical. Obama and the Democrats cannot continue to run single-year deficits of over $1 trillion and expect the United States to succeed. The Romney-Ryan budget proposes reforms of taxes and Medicare to save money while actively working to increase the well-being of every American citizen. Finally, let's talk fairness. Claims that Ryan's Medicare plan hurts seniors and the tax code favors the rich are inherently false. Ryan's Medicare plan gives less to the rich and more to the poor. Romney's tax plan still ensures that the rich pay more taxes than the poor. Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan aren't looking to victimize the poor. Rather, they have proposed more efficient, more practical, and fairer budget policy.
Hello, my name is Nisa Sim, and I am representing the Democrats in this debate. Concerning the efficiency of the Romney tax plan and its ability to decrease the deficit, that is a completely false statement. The Romney tax plan is at best incomplete. He claims that he will broaden the tax base, but has failed to give specifics on how he plans to do so. Without such an explanation, Romney's plan to reduce the federal tax deficit seems impossible. He plans on reducing taxes across the board, which can only possibly mean a reduction in tax revenue. If a budget deficit is the difference between outlays and tax revenue, then how could such an immense reduction in tax revenue create a decrease in the deficit? Romney's illogical plan will inevitably land America in a worse economic situation. And I would like to continue on to talk about the fairness of Romney's tax plan. If you go through the points of the individual tax plan that Romney has laid out officially, he discusses things such as the alternative minimum tax. If anyone is familiar with that, they will know the alternative minimum tax is a tax that assures that all Americans are paying at least a certain minimum of their taxes. And specifically, this tax applies to people who are making over $121,000. And so this is, in case you're wondering, people who are in the top quintile of the American tax bracket. This is a tax on only the wealthy, and it is meant to equalize the amount of taxes the tax rates of Americans, and by repealing it, then we would actually be reducing a great amount of the revenue coming in, and it would also be an act against fairness. I would like to continue on to talk about his plan to maintain current tax rates on interest, dividends, and capital gains. I would like to point out that Mitt Romney pays 14.1% on his taxes, which is significantly lower than most people. But most interestingly, you'd be very interested to know that 13% of this is on dividends, interest, and capital gains. So by maintaining it, he would be ensuring that his tax rate stays low, as well as those who are in a similar economic bracket as him.
Thank you. Thank you. It's 90 seconds for the opening statement. So now we're into the 5 minutes back and forth.
All right. I want to talk about a couple of your first points. About what you said about Romney's taxation plan, about talking about broadening the tax base, except that there's going to be less revenue, so you're wondering how it's going to balance the budget. That's the point of cutting spending, is when we get our fiscal house in order, we cut spending on things that we don't need to spend on, and then we reduce the deficits that we have, and therefore, we're in a better fiscal situation.
My rebuttal to that is, what spending does he outline that we should cut exactly? Should we cut welfare? Should we cut Medicaid? Should we cut security? Should we cut any of the important programs that we give to states in block grants and such? What should we cut exactly?
What do we cut exactly? He's not talking about cutting welfare, first of all. Like I said, Republicans are fair. They know that if some people are in hard economic situations, they're not going to cut off funding to them, because that's fundamentally unfair. As for things like Medicare and Social Security, something like 58% of Obama's budget plan in 2012 was dedicated to Medicare and Social Security spending. That's what we're going to target. And the way to fix Medicare is through Paul Ryan's Medicare plan, by giving a government subsidy to lower income people to buy private insurance. That will actually lower the costs of the government's healthcare spending, and so we're going to cut the deficit by cutting all that spending on entitlements. Right now it's out of control. The fee-for-service system is not sustainable. So by doing this, giving more money to the poor to buy health insurance for poor seniors, and by giving less money to the richer Americans over 65, we're going to see a lot more fiscal sustainability.
So you're essentially saying that you want the older Americans who have paid into the tax system over the course of their life to be blocked out of what they have paid for?
No, because Americans 55 and older right now are not going to be affected by this plan. Americans have 10 years to figure out how we're going to save for retirement. Let's get my household finances in order. And then once you get to that 65-year-old mark, the government's going to say, all right, well, we need to focus our spending on the poorer seniors because they need the most help. The whole point of entitlement programs as implemented by FDR was to prevent seniors from going into poverty. And I think that's what the programs need to return to. And that's exactly what Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney are proposing to do.
However, you simply just said that you were going to stop spending so much money on older Americans. So that was actually a contradiction to what you previously said.
No, it's not. Because the wealthier Americans don't need that much help. I mean, I know people, there's people in my family who have made a very good living for themselves, and they still get Social Security and Medicare. And that's the kind of stuff they're trying to cut down on. They're saying, look, if you're in a better economic situation, why is the government still giving you money out of the system that should be focused on poorer Americans that actually need the help?
I'm interested in wondering, do you have any exact numbers on that entitlement program that you're talking about? Would those numbers actually be a decrease in the spending on of Medicare? Would that actually work? Or is that just like a general idea?
Well, fundamentally, if you spend less money, you're going to be spending less money. So.
But you didn't
Yeah.
you didn't specifically say that it was less money. You just said it was a different way of doing it, which doesn't imply less money. It could in fact imply more money. Which and seeing as the vagueness of Romney's plan as it currently is, I would take a guess that it might be more money.
I guess I'm not seeing how spending less money is going to lead to spending more money.
But you didn't
I
say that you were
will-
spending less money.
just
You
hold
didn't.
on a
You
second,
didn't say
because
that. You didn't have any facts for that. Yeah.
I guess I implied it. My bad if you didn't catch up on it. But I guess I will say that.
Oh, you don't want to say anything? Okay, all right. Want me to talk?
Good answer. Good answer.
You all have 1 minute left to fight.
I was going to say about the saving money. So Medicare right now is slated to spend around, so far the government owes like $40 trillion over the next 12 years. And that kind of spending is out of control. So what we're going to cut down on is the spending on people that can already sustain themselves through retirement, people that have the 401k plans through their companies, the people that have
Is
retirement.
that a significant number of people in America?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Do you have any facts?
Yeah, the median income is around 54,000, and that's every year. So,
And so you're giving them 10 years on 54,000 income. Do you know how much the cost of living is in America? It's actually much higher than the poverty rate, in case you're wondering, significantly. And so those Americans that you're talking about wouldn't be able to adequately save over the course of 10 years for their retirement for the rest of their lives, especially considering that the life expectancy of Americans is going up.
they do have a plan in place to take care of the people that, like I said, don't have as much savings. So yeah, at first, the people that are 55 now, that if the plan was implemented, eventually, after 10 years, they're going to save for 10 years. So they won't have as much savings. So the Medicare system will give them more subsidies because they won't have the money. But eventually, it's going to lead to a cut because when people are saving for a longer and longer time, they're going to have more money to spend on healthcare when they retire. And so that is definitely a cut because people will be encouraged to save more money. That's what we're getting at here.
Do people have the ability to save more money? However, that's the question.
Okay, we now turn to the audience to insult you.
All right.
So what I've been trying to do is pick from each section. So I'm going to start over here with the young man in the cap.
I spent a lot of time criticizing the Romney-Ryan budget. Not once did you mention what the Obama budget's going to be, and if you have a plan, because you didn't have a plan for the last 4 years. We've been $5 trillion in debt under this administration. Six. We haven't saved any money, and there's no budget in place, and there doesn't look to be a budget in the next time. So what is your plan?
Our plan, the Obama plan, is that we are going to close all loopholes that are allowing rich Americans to have low tax rates, and through the money that we are going to recoup through that, we are going to be able to reduce the deficit over time, and that would be much more effective than the Romney plan, which has no specifics whatsoever. We're going to do this by making sure that every American who pays over $1 million is paying a high tax rate that will actually be able to cover us. And in case you're wondering, the amount of money that they are making is 50.1% of all the money in America. And so if they are making that much money, then it seems very logical that they could easily make up for that deficit that we have.
May I respond real quick?
No.
Shut down, all right.
Oh wait, are they allowed?
Well, yeah, I guess they want to.
I just want to make
30 seconds.
I just want to make a point that the Congressional Budget Office, which is bipartisan, actually did a calculation of what Obama's plan would raise in terms of revenue. It was something like $18 billion a year. You know, that's real nice in the face of $1 trillion deficits. And so I think Obama's plan of just raising taxes, closing loopholes, eliminating deductions, that's not going to solve the problem. There's a fundamental problem with spending. We cannot just try to fix the broken system. We got to fundamentally change it.
30
We'd
seconds.
like to see the broken
Yes,
system.
yes, ma'am.
On the Medicare and the means testing, which is different, giving more to the poor than you would to the rich people for Medicare. My understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the Romney plan is a little different from the Ryan plan, and that the Romney plan would give you the option of keeping Medicare or choosing to kind of do your own, keeping your money and investing it yourself through health savings accounts and a combination of insurance and things like that, so that doesn't totally take away from the people who are not on the poverty level. Is that your did I misunderstand you?
No, so first of all, the Ryan plan is the Romney plan because they are on the same presidential ticket. You know, they've kind of merged their economic policies. So what you were saying about choosing the current Medicare system over the private subsidy system is that's what applies to Americans 55 and over. You can keep exactly what you have, or you can take the government subsidy to buy private insurance. And so you are right, that does apply, but just to the Americans 55 and over. There may be some exceptions in the overall plan if it's passed for people if they can't find a certain type of insurance. There will be exceptions to that. The government will find a way to deal with it. Because fundamentally what it is they're trying to introduce market competition into the Medicare system, and what that'll do is decrease the cost of health insurance by introducing that competition. Everybody's going to be competing to get these subsidies that people are getting from the government to buy health insurance, and so fundamentally that's what the system's moving to. But for everyone 55 and over right now, nothing has to change. You can choose to go into the subsidy system if you want, but you don't have to.
In the front.
Could you all briefly talk about, well, it's the same question, but a different situation. If Obama won, I'd like you to respond to how you would approach the budget situation if you had a divided House and Senate vote, like a referendum. If you had both parties on your side, or both houses on your side, or if you had both houses on our side, on the Republican side, and you would say thing except if Ross won, how you would approach, because depending on what the houses are, you would be able to.
I'm going to first answer the question on how we would react if it was both Democrats in both houses and a majority. We would quickly pass a Buffett-similar rule that is adjusted for inflation and would close the deficit over time, and that would probably work. I'm pretty sure that would work. It would work.
I hope.
It won't.
All right. If it was a divided house, then we would work. If it was divided between the two, we would work together to cut spending in appropriate situations. Probably not the mandatory spending that we have on Social Security and Medicare. Probably not that. Probably in other locations, such as spending $40 billion on jets that we aren't going to fly ever. Probably that. We'd probably cut that. And if it was all Republicans, well, that wouldn't happen, so that, yeah, we wouldn't have to deal with that ever. But if that were to happen, we would work with them, and we would work in coalition to try and make it work because we have a common interest in reducing the deficit over time, and I think neither side wants to see us fall off the fiscal cliff, and so we'd probably make it work.
Luke, are you responding?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, Jeremy.
I would have to say on bipartisan reform, if we had split House and Senate, or if we had an entirely Democratic Senate and a Republican president, we would definitely have to work together. Right now, what's going on is that the Tea Party movement helped get Republicans to the House in 2010, and so basically, what has been happening is we've been waiting for the 2012 election to come about to decide which way Americans want to go. Because right now the whole fight is, which way are we going to go? Are we going to move more conservatively, or are we going to move more liberally? And I think once Washington learns what America really wants in this election, they're going to be able to work together let's say, we have Romney in the White House and we have an entirely Democratic Senate and House, while that definitely would be hard to come about with such a huge Republican lead in the House. In that kind of situation, Romney would definitely try to compromise with the Democrats. He's done it before in Massachusetts, and he'll be able to do it again.
We're at the 6.5-minute mark, and so in order to be fair to the third and fourth panel, I'm going to have to end the question and answer period. Sorry, folks, but I was hired full time, so I'm just following the rules. And so now you won't have 30 seconds for your closing statements.
I will start. I started first.
Yes, okay, yes.
All right, so I will say in conclusion, Romney-Ryan budget really is the only one out there. Obama had tried to put out this 2012 fiscal budget and this 2013 fiscal budget. Neither one of them actually got any votes anywhere. So I think fundamentally we have to work with this plan to get our fiscal house in order. And I think I've shown just now that the Democratic plan of getting our fiscal house in order is not sustainable. We cannot continue to have Medicare the way it is now. We cannot continue to tax America like we do now. And so, in conclusion, I think this plan is the best, most fiscally sound, efficient, practical plan out there.
I would like to say that I believe that the Romney-Ryan plan is completely illogical and that it would benefit only wealthy Americans, especially if we're going with the Ryan plan as well now, which gives Romney that 1% tax rate along with everyone else who's in his tax bracket. And I believe that going with Romney would eventually lead to a massive increase of the deficit, especially considering that his plan is either to go with Ryan's plan, which will completely destroy our tax revenue, or to go with his non-existent plan. So that is all. Thank you.
Okay, the fraternity boys in the back, quiet now. Folks, we've now moved into part 3 of this debate. The topic of discussion now is the topic of debate deals with the Arab Spring. Representing the Democrats is Tom Burns, the Republicans, Sam Martin. So, Tom, you're starting first. It's a 90-second intro statement.
I like this topic a lot. The reason I do is because it's an interesting debate, I think. I'm excited to do it because we really didn't do that much over there. There's been a lot been going on, and I guess a lot of people have been saying we've been doing more. We should have protected our allies, supported our allies. And the way I see it is that we did exactly the amount that we needed to do, and we're letting this system go the way it needs to go into democracy in some cases, and we don't really know what's going to come out because it's not our countries. Obama said in this, when he spoke to the Islamic people the people in the Middle East right before the Arab Spring started, as his testament to how he wanted to treat the Middle East under his new regime. He said that all nations must maintain power through consent and not coercion. And people like Mubarak, who we were supporting for 40 years, who were not for democracy, they were not for civil rights and everything else like that. I think strong leaders, even when we've invested a lot in something, 40 years in investing in Mubarak, we realize that maybe it's time to try a different path. And I love Obama for this Arab Spring because I think it's a lot of good stuff. See the rest of my time.
What about the ambassador?
I'm sorry. You're going to be asked to leave if you do that again. There's no place for that.
Thank you.
When analyzing the Arab Spring, particularly our country's involvement in it, we should keep in mind one of Milton Friedman's many axioms. Friedman said that one of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. Let us then look at the results of President Obama's imprudent dabbling in the Mideast, and particularly in the midst of the Arab Spring. In light of the events of September 11, 2012, the achievements of President Obama in the Mideast have decidedly soured. In Libya, the new government seemingly exercises little to no authority. Al-Qaeda operates freely, even in what was once the de facto capital of the rebels, where they succeeded in murdering 4 American diplomats, including Ambassador to Libya, J. Christopher Stevens. The consulate was burned, sensitive information fell into the hands of the enemy. This attack took place under cover of an unruly mob, filled with hate and vitriol against our nation. We spent 11 years in Afghanistan striving to deprive Al-Qaeda of a safe harbor. It is very likely we have now given them a new and more dangerous one, a stone's throw away from our NATO allies in Europe. In Egypt, the folly of our president was all too clear from the get-go. Hosni Mubarak was Washington's closest friend in the Arab world. He never engaged in warmongering with Israel, he fought hard to keep terrorist elements out of Egypt, and he ensured the safety of Egypt's sizable Christian minority. After his American-supported ouster, these things are all now in question. The revolution was hardly democratic either. It was effectuated by the Egyptian military, who ruled over the country for over a year as a junta. While President Obama spoke of a new future for Egypt, the radical Islamist Muslim Brotherhood is plotting their resurfacing in Egyptian politics, something long prevented by Mubarak and his predecessors. In a turn of events totally unsurprising to anyone decently well-informed, the Brotherhood won the first election in the presidency. So we now have a radical Islamist government, the implementation of Sharia law, the persecution of the Copts, an uncertain future for Israel, and a drastically diminished American influence. Talk about results. To top all this off, the embassy in Cairo has been ransacked, as have the ones in Tunisia, Sudan, and Yemen. Obviously, the Libyan consulate. Our walls have been breached, our flag burned, our soil violated, and the president's notion that we would be thanked for our involvement in the Arab Spring is clearly not true.
Thanks, Sam.
I'll touch on Libya first because that's where you started off. With your last comment there too, we'll be thanked. We have been thanked in Libya. And what you need to understand, they just had a civil war where their whole country was ravished. So yeah, I'm sorry they don't have like a full government yet. They don't have a leader yet. They just did elect a parliament, who is is secular. And they're not Islamic, they're not radical or anything else. And they're taking big steps. Like they just went through a civil war. They're understanding what kind of society they are. They've been under a regime for a long time who attacked us, which led to Gaddafi's death. Through our support, we did exactly what they wanted us to do. They wanted a no-fly zone to protect us so they could carry out their work.
Are we there?
We did that, and they're thanking us now for that. They didn't want boots on the ground. Because you look at France, they were in Northern Africa all the time. Everyone in Northern Africa hates France because they were over there trying to...
Well, are we there to do what they want us to do, or are we there to do what helps the United States? Because I'm not questioning the motives of that government,
okay, great.
by no means.
So look at
can I get a word in, please?
Right, look at the government that they created, though. Just look at it, because they're creating a democratic government that's not Islamic. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not saying
you're gonna have to pause to let someone respond.
Think about it.
By no means am I saying the Islamist government, it's not an Islamist government in Libya by any means. I'm not questioning their motives. I'm questioning their competency, seeing as we had an Al-Qaeda attack at our embassy, which they're obliged to protect under the Vienna Convention, which they didn't do. And we have 4 dead Americans because of that. So I think we should start asking serious questions instead of defending them. We want to ask why these things happen.
Like I said, they just went through a civil war. They're still trying to figure out all their security. They're not a stable government yet. They don't have a leader yet. They don't have an elected leader. Going back to Egypt and those attacks, though, they were held out by a radical group in Egypt, and who does control, have people in parliament now, which is concerning. But again, getting back to the Muslim Brotherhood, I was looking them up, and they do have a very violent past. No one can deny that. We're a terrorist organization. They talked about terrorism. But looking in the last 15 years, the closest statement I could find to anything being terrorism, they said that supporting terrorism towards America, they said that America is supporting dictatorships in the Middle East, like Mubarak, like Saudi Arabia, that was causing terrorism, because they said under those regimes, that's
the last 15 years, though, they've been suppressed by Mubarak, so you're not going to find many quotes. And that's one of the things Mubarak did, is he kept these terrorist elements, these radical elements, out of Egypt. He kept Al-Qaeda out, he turned over terrorists to the United States, and he kept the Muslim Brotherhood down. So you're not going to hear much radical rhetoric from the Muslim Brotherhood because they were being sent to prison. They're not going to go out and say many things. And that's what housing embargo did. And this came at the cost of over $1 billion a year to this country, which is a sizable investment that went on for decades.
So, Mohammed,
we're throwing that away. We spent years giving them billions of dollars, and all on a whim. Some people showed up in the square, and which is great, but we have to look out for our own interests, and we can't throw away the most stable dictator, the most stable leader, the most friendly, and the most friendly state in the Middle East. We can't throw that away.
I'm confused on what you expected him to do. Like, there was millions of people in a square saying, we want our government overturned. That's
Well, I
supposed to
expected
go against
Barack Obama to not support the overthrow of an ally.
He's not an ally.
He actually was. He's
George
considered
Bush
by
said,
law
all right.
a non-NATO ally.
Okay, George Bush said that his biggest disappointment in office, foreign policy-wise, was not getting Mubarak under control, was not turning him away. I think a good leader, like I said earlier, looks at these investments that you made and said, yeah, I made a huge investment in Mubarak. He's a leader, he supported our interests, but when the people want an overturn, you can't go against the people. Like, you can't go against democracy.
You sound like a neoconservative. We're now the peace force to go out and to
No,
defend
because
democracy.
we didn't do anything there. We'd let them have their own democracy.
What kind of a policy is it to be overthrown?
Neoconservatives would go in there and...
Can I please talk?
Go ahead.
How do we expect to have allies abroad when they know the United States will, on a whim, seek to have them overthrown and imprisoned? That's no way to carry out our foreign policy.
A couple questions for you. The peace treaty with Israel. One second. The peace treaty with Israel.
Well, no, I let you speak for a long time. Now I'm speaking. No.
Peace treaty with Israel.
No.
Let's get ready to
Peace treaty with Israel. Is that under threat with Mubarak right now? Under the new regime.
Okay, I'm going to stop this back and forth because you all are wasting our time. We're at the 4.5 minute mark, so I'm happy to start entertaining questions from the crowd for you all, because that's the only way to get you all to focus. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I guess I got one for Mr. Martin here. You know, is it at all ethical? You know, for the United States, which supposedly prides itself on supporting democracy and human rights, etc. You know, to support a regime that brutalizes, rapes, murders, and kills. And by the way, like, would you versus an Islamist organization that actually swore on violence, from what I recall, in like the 50s.
Okay, we got to get to the question. You've had 30 seconds already.
Is it at all ethical, to support monsters that destroy?
Okay, start talking.
What I think is unethical is putting government in power that persecutes a Christian minority, that jails them, that tortures them, that tries to suppress them, tries to drive them out of the country. A government that warmongers with Israel, a country that is surrounded by, or used to be surrounded by countries that want to destroy it. And we crafted a hard-won peace with the Camp David Accords, and that's being thrown